Hello, everyone. I'm Adam with AEW Maine Treasure Ventures. Normally, I'm diving and metal detecting underwater, trying to clean out the Maine waterways, and of course, looking for treasure. Well, today's treasure might not be the normal relic, silver, or gold items, but instead, we're going to take a look at a different kind of treasure. Maybe some would say a hidden gem, especially the locals of MDI. We are going to talk about someone I would consider a local legend, Gunnar Milton Hansen. And if you were lucky enough to ever meet him, you would know exactly what I'm talking about. I always loved bumping into him at the store or around town. We would usually talk about some of the cool and interesting places around the island. The majority of the world knew him because of his acting career, and we will definitely dive into that and so much more. So let's get right into it. Gunnar was born March 4th, 1947, in Reykjavik, Iceland. His parents were Scully Hansen, a dentist, and Sigrid Hansen. He lived in Iceland until he moved to the United States with his mother and brother at 5 years old, living in Searsport, Maine until he was 11. This would be etched as an amazing place in his early childhood and wouldn't be the last time he called Maine his home. The family moved once again, this time to Austin, Texas. Texas would be where Gunnar would attend Austin High School. While there, he did play football. After graduating high school, he would attend the University of Texas at Austin. He was extremely intelligent. He majored in English and mathematics as an undergrad, and then went to graduate school for Scandinavian studies and English. He would have been the coolest teacher in the world to have. In 1973, after finishing graduate school, Gunnar heard that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was being filmed in Austin, essentially right in his backyard. So he decided to audition for the part, not knowing if he would get it or not, but at 6'4", 280 pounds, he had what it took to be the looming Hulk of Leatherface. He was soon offered the part of his life, playing Leatherface, the mass killer in the movie, giving way to one of the most prolific horror characters in the horror film genre. It was, and still is, Leatherface. Of course, Jason, Freddy, Michael Myers, and maybe now Ghostface is in the mix of the greatest horror characters of all time, but Gunnar helped start the craze. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, released in 1974, is widely considered one of the best and most influential horror movie of all time. Some say it's one of the scariest horror films ever made, and others consider it a perfect horror film. Did you know it's credited with originating many elements of the slasher genre, including the use of power tools as murder weapons, and the mass killer? When it was originally released, Australian censors banned it for being too violent and disturbing. If it wasn't for Gunnar's performance of the crazed killer, who knows where the horror genre would be today? Did I mention that over the 6 weeks of filming more than 12 hours a day, Hansen's total pay was about $400 a week to make the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This wasn't the only thing that he accomplished in the film industry. He would act in about 36 different film, documentary, and television shows from 1973 to 2015. It started in 1974 release of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. His final role was in 2013's Texas Chainsaw 3D, and the last movie that he wrote but wasn't released until 2017 after his passing. That movie was called Death House. He wanted to have as many of the horror legends cameo in the movie, like Sid Haig, Tony Todd, Kane Hodder, Bill Moseley, Michael Berryman, Gunnar himself, and a ton of other actors and actresses from horrors past. He did join the Comic-Con circuit, traveling around to different shows, meeting fans, doing Q&A panels, and signing tons of autographs. Over the years, they have made thousands of Halloween costumes, toys, and just about everything you can think of off the likeness of Gunnar's Leatherface. These are just some of the collectibles that have been made for Leatherface. In 1975, he moved back to Maine, this time moving to Northeast Harbor. He worked as a carpenter, but that wasn't his passion. He had a number of other interesting jobs along the way. He was a bouncer at my favorite Bar Harbor spot, Jetty's. He worked as a bartender for a while at another local restaurant. He also worked as a garbage collector, all while picking up some acting gigs every now and then. He would soon jump into what he always dreamed of doing. Gunnar's passion was writing books, poetry, and editing for magazines. He did a lot of local history with filmmaking. A ton of his writing was on the history of the island. I would have loved to see some of the last things that he was writing that had to do with this area. I also loved talking to him about the local history, and it was never about being a celebrity, because forever, I didn't even know he was an actor. I just knew him as a cool dude that was extremely smart and knew a lot of the history of the island. Hanging out with Gunnar at Jetty's in Bar Harbor a bunch of times in the late 90s, early 2000s was also an amazing adventure. I would share the history that I knew with him, always trying to throw out something that he didn't know was there. For most people that knew him around here, would just say he was an amazing, entertaining friend and just an overall great person. The acting was really just a small part of Gunnar Hansen's life. It was a hobby. Many people didn't know he had his pilot's license. He could also captain just about anything on the water, so he could take you anywhere in the world on pretty much any vehicle or vessel. Gunnar would meet his partner later in his life. Her name was Betty Tower. They met in 2002 in Las Vegas, Nevada, where she worked in the tourism industry. She moved to MDI, where she would work as a personal banker at Bar Harbor Bank and Trust until she retired in 2021. The acting bug was also picked up by Gunnar's niece, Kristen Hansen, as she's been in a number of TV shows and films. She has credits to her name like Breaking Bad and Romeo and Juliet versus the Living Dead. I will put a number of links to Gunnar's books, movies, and his websites if you would like to check them out in the description. He had so much more to write about and share the history of the things that were of interest to him, but unfortunately that won't happen. Gunnar Hansen died at his home in Northeast Harbor, Maine, of pancreatic cancer on November 7, 2015, at the age of 68. You won't find his grave online, but I will show you his final resting place. He was laid to rest at Forest Hill Cemetery here in Northeast Harbor, not too far from his home. Gunnar's grave is near some really interesting people like Gary Moore, another actor and comedian, along with Samuel Eliot Morrison, an historian. I'm pretty sure they are all swapping notes on what they knew and learned while here on Earth. They are just some of the interesting people that are buried here. Gunnar Hansen will continue to be missed by millions of people that celebrate one of the many characters that he played. Just remember, he was so much more to his family and this community than Leatherface. He was always just Gunnar. You should check out some of his books and documentaries that he put so much more of his time and energy into making. Maine has had and will continue to have a fair share of celebs living here, but none of them are or were like Gunnar. He lived, breathed, learned about, and took everything in on this great state of Maine. Gunnar, what do you love?
What do I love? Great music, certain vegetables.
Have you won any awards? What was your favorite award?
I have. Horror Icon from Universal Pictures.
Have you ever been in a fight, and who won?
Yes, with Johnny Koenig in the 6th grade. He did.
Gunnar, can you give me 3 adjectives to describe yourself?
What was that great thing that George Herbert Walker Bush's wife Barbara said? Inside, I'm really young, thin, and beautiful.
Let's now take a walk over to his grave and pay our respect. Here is Leatherface swinging his chainsaw around in front of the rising sun. His crazed dance of death, not just a ritual, but a warning. Once again, I'll leave a list of things to check out in the description. Until the next adventure, AEW out.